Hey guys, this is New Sensei. Today I have a quick video covering a fairly trivial topic, and that's knocking the arrow. And by that I mean putting the arrow onto the string. This really isn't the hardest thing to do, and I didn't want to do a whole tutorial about how to put the arrow on a string. But several people have asked some interesting questions about the specific ins and outs and hows and quirks. So I thought I'd combine a few different questions into this one video that concerns putting the arrow onto the string. One of the questions that was asked was, how do you manipulate the arrow while wearing a tab? Fairly easily. But in fairness, it depends on what kind of tab you use as well. If you're using the typical beginner tabs where it's just a piece of leather, that can be quite flimsy, and putting that on and putting the arrow on can be a little clumsy because it gets in the way. Most of the competitive tabs are much better designed. They've got a different strap compared to the simple leather tabs, so it's easy to hold the tab and hold the arrow. Specifically, I tend to use my thumb and my index finger to pull arrows and insert arrows. You don't need a whole hand for that, you just need two fingers. So they're usually off the tab, like that. So I can just like pull things and put things in, pull it out, just using the two fingers, the thumb and the index finger, in a pinch grip. Another way, if you're really having trouble manipulating arrows, is to just spin the tab around on your hand and just use your fingers for whatever you need to do. Again, it just depends on your tab. The flimsy beginner tabs are a little hard to use, but proper tabs are meant to allow you to have full control of what you do with your fingers while wearing your tab. Somebody else asked me, how do you do the twirl? It took me a while to figure out what the twirl was, but the twirl is actually a bit of a flourish, which some archers like to do on the line. Chris B on YouTube does this a lot between his shots. The twirl is basically when you pull an arrow from your quiver, you spin it around and then you clip it onto your string. This is a fairly uncommon flourish. People don't normally do this on the line. It's very much a personality thing, and some archers tend to do it more than others. Now, since I don't do the twirl, this isn't a great scientific breakdown on how to spin your arrow. But normally, when you pull your arrow from your quiver, you hold it like this, and then just pull it out like that. To do the twirl, instead of holding it like this conventionally, you actually have to put your hand on the other side of the shaft. You then pull it out, and as you pull it out, you spin it around like this. You turn your wrist around, and then you pass between your index and your middle fingers, and you grip it with your thumb. So I'll do it in normal speed, so it comes out like that. In slower motion, again, you put your hand on the other side of the shaft, you come out, turn your wrist, pass between your index and middle fingers, turn it around, and then pinch it in your thumb and index finger. So it comes out like that. You can play it out like multiple times on YouTube if you want to. So it comes out like that. Back, out, back, out. Bear in mind that this tends to be more common with people who use field quivers. Most hip quivers point forward, and this allows you to easily get the arrow out with less movement. Field quivers point backwards. I don't have one to kind of demonstrate, but they point this way. So you're shooting, the arrows aren't in the way, so it's more convenient for some people, but it's a bit more awkward to pull out. So because it's pointing backwards, people naturally grip it like this overhand. The hip quivers point forward, you grip underhand. Field quivers backward, overhand, which naturally means you can pull it out and spin it. It's actually one of the easier ways to retrieve an arrow from your field quiver. So that's one big difference. The other reason you don't normally see this is because you kind of need to be a compound shooter. Recurve shooters have a finger tab, which makes it a bit more awkward to... Exactly. The fact that you're wearing a finger tab means you don't manipulate your fingers as easily because you have this big tab and finger space in the way. So you still can do it, but it's just a lot more awkward because there's things in the way. That's why compound shooters are more likely to do it, because they're not wearing a finger tab. Their release date might be in their pouch, or might be clipped onto their D-loop. The finger tab makes it a lot harder to do, so it's kind of not worth the effort. Another question that was asked of me was, why don't I grip the arrow by the nock when nocking the arrow? And the reason is, the arrow is very long and front heavy. When you manipulate the arrow, when you pull it from your quiver, you don't pull it by the nock. You can, a lot of people do this. But if I pull it from the nock and I try to stick it onto my string, it's just too awkward because the weight's on this side and I'm trying to stick it on here. It just doesn't make much sense. So I prefer to pull it, I prefer to hold it kind of here when I pull it out. So when I pull from the quiver, it comes out like that, turn it, and then I'll normally slip my finger down towards the fletchings and clip it on there. That gives me more control of the arrow. I don't need that much precision with the nock to clip it on. I just go clip like that. The last and biggest question is, how do competitive archers nock their arrows? There are two main variations. This is so personalized and preference based that it doesn't really matter. Archers either insert the arrow from the inside of the bow or from the outside of the bow. Now my preference is the inside of the bow. It just feels more comfortable and more intuitive for me. What I do, I take my arrow, I slide it. For me, it's a right hand arch on the right side of the string. I thread it onto the rest, and then I grip it with my index finger and middle finger on my bow hand. Now I am wearing a sling, so I can't manipulate my hand freely, but it gives me enough control to slide the arrow in. I then slide it down the wrist, clip it under the clicker, and then nock the arrow between my nocking points. So my whole process from start to finish is pull the arrow, thread through, and then clip it on. That's basically it. The other method is the outside of the bow. They will grab the arrow, clip it onto the string first, and then slide it under clicker and onto the rest. So from start to finish, arrow, string, clicker, rest. Another variation is to tilt the bow forward and lean it against the front stabilizer. This brings the nocking point closer to you, so you can take your arrow and nock it on much easier, using which side you want to. Some people have noted in a couple of my videos that they've seen some archers load the bow like this. They point towards the sky and then clip the arrow onto the string and then put it back down. This is fine, this is legal. It doesn't violate the high draw rule. The high draw rule only applies when it comes to actually drawing the string back. So the moment you start pulling it back, if it's high, that's a violation. But if you're loading the bow and you're not drawing the string back, that's completely fine. You don't normally see this with Olympic recurve. You find that bare bow shooters tend to do it more often. The reason being, of course, is that they don't have the stabilizers for the additional weight and support, so they kind of have to do different methods to be more comfortable loading the bow. Speaking of violations, you can't do this. A lot of new archers who are just getting used to the equipment will nock the arrow like this. They'll tilt it to the side and then clip it on and then put it back. You can't do this. This is a violation of range safety and competition rules. You aren't allowed to exceed the space you have, and that's normally 80 centimeters as a minimum. You can't tilt your bow this way because your limbs are now infringing on the people around you. As a safety precaution, this means that you might hit someone or hit their bow. People do this as a habit because of the much shorter bows. Compared to the 68-inch target recurve, a bow like the Islamic Sage is only 62 inches long. So I can't put it on my foot and nock it. It's too low for me to do that. I'm a small guy and I can't do this. So the easy method is to hold it up, and then if you're using a hip quiver, just slide it through. Or if you're using a back quiver, it's quite instinctive to hold it here, come through, and then clip it on like that. Now, doing this in the field is okay, but on a shooting line with people next to you, you simply can't do this. Whew, okay, that was probably the most comprehensive video on nocking the arrow you'll probably find on the internet. I didn't think I'd be covering that much, but since people want to know, I provide. Anyway, this is New Sensei. Thanks for watching. Hope you found this interesting, and I'll see you next time.